Sham Sharadava Nalalidaloka Tranaya Karuna Gana Ganatam Samsaradava Nalalidaloka Tunaya Karuna Gana Ganatam Prapta Sakalyana Gunana Vasya Vande Guru Shri Charana Ravindam Prapta Sakalyana Gunana Vasya Vande Guru Shri Vande Guru Shri Charana Ravindam Vande Guru Shri Charana Ravindam Mahaprabhu ki Tana Nitya Gita Vaditra Madhya Manasura Sena Romanchakam Pasru Taranga Bhaju Vande Guru Shri Charana Ravindam Shri Vigrahara Dhana Nityanana Shringaratanma Nirama Janado Shri Vigrahara Dhana Nityanana Shringaratanma Nirama Janado Juktasya bhaktamsya niyunjatopi Vande Guru Shri Charana Ravindam Chaturvidha Shri Bhagavat Prasada Satvana Triptam Hari Bhakta Sangha Chaturvidha Shri Kridvaiva Tripti Bhajata Sadeva Vande Guru Shri Charana Ravindam Shiradikama Davayara Para Madhurya Leela Guna Rupa Namna Shiradikama Davayara Para Pratikshana Sa Dhanalalupasya Vande Guru Shri Charana Ravindam Nekunjayuno Ratikeli Siddhai जयालि भेर्युक्ते अपेक्षणीया तत्र तिदक्ष अतिबलवस्य वन्दे गुरुश्री चरणरविन्दम् साक्षादरितेन समस्तशास्त्रे पृक्तास्तथैव व्यतैव साधुभिः किन्तु प्रवर्ज्य प्रियैव तस्य वन्दे गुरुश्री चरणरविन्दम् यस्य प्रसाद भगवत्प्रसाद यस्य प्रसाद न गति कुतपि यस्य प्रसाद ध्यायां स्तुवां तस्य यस्य संज्ञं वन्दे गुरुश्री चरणरविन्दम् वन्दे गुरुश्री चरणरविन्दम् वन्दे गुरुश्री चरणरविन्दम् नमो ॐ विष्णुपदाय कृष्णपृष्ठाय भूतले श्रीमते भक्तिवेदान्त स्वामिनिति नामिने नमस्ते सरस्वते देवे गौरवाणी प्रचारिणे निर्विशेष शून्यवादी पाश्चात्यदेश तारिणे जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर शिवासादि गौर भक्तवृंद जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर शिवासादि गौर भक्तवृंद श्री Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Chaitanya Nityananda Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Ram, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Nama Krishna Jadavaye Nama Jadavaye Madhavaya Kesavaye Namaha Gopal Govinda Ram Shri Madhusudan Giridhari Gopinath Madana Mohan Shri Chaitanya Nityananda Shri Advaita Sita Hari Guru Vaishnava Bhagavata Gita Shri Rupa Sanatan Bhattara Guna Shri Jiva Gopala Bhatta Dasara Guna Shri Radha Nilamadhava Radha Nilamadhava Radhe Jaya Jagannath Jaya Baladeva Jaya Subhadrama Jaya Sudarshan Chakra Netai Go Haribo 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 Netai Go Haribo Haribo Netai Go Netai Go Pramanandi Haribo Jai Om Vishnu Paraparamita Prabhajaka Sutra Sri Shrimad His Divine Grace of Bhachan Bhakti Vedanta Swami Maharaj Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai ISKCON Pratishtha Vividi Samstha Kachar Vaishnava Patita Pavan Vaishnav Shramani Srila Prabhupada Ji Maharaj Ki Jai Shri Gauriya Guru Varga Patita Udhara Ki Jai Shri Rupa Sanatana Bhattar Gunath Shri Jiva Gopala Bhatta Dasa Guna Sadguru Swami Prabhu Ki Jai Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ji Ki Jai Ananta Koti Vaishnava Vrindi Ki Jai प्रेम से कहो श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर शिवसरि गौर भक्तवृंद की जय जय परम दयाल श्री नित्यानंद प्रभु की जय प्रेम नाम संकीर्तन के जनक प्रेम पुरुषोत्तम श्री सच्चिदानंद श्रीमान गौरंग श्री चैतन्य महाप्रभु गौर हरि महावरण अवतार की जय गोलोकेर प्रमधान हरि नाम संकीर्तन जय की जय जुग धर्म हरि कृष्ण महामंत्र की जय बृहद मृदंग ट्रांसलेटर बुक डिस्ट्रीब्यूशन सेवा की जय श्री श्री राधा कृष्ण गोप कुपना राधा कुंद श्याम कुंद गिरिराज गोवर्धन की जय श्री ब्रजबन वृंदावन मथुरा धाम की जय दिलो शिव श्री राधा माधव की जय श्री माया पूर्णद्वीप एक चक्र धाम की जय परम करुणा श्री गौर निताय की जय श्री पुरुषोत्तम चित्र जगन्नाथपुरी धाम की जय श्री श्री जगन्नाथ स्वामी बलदेव प्रभु स्मृत देव सुदर्शन चक्र भगवान की जय सीताराम लक्ष्मण भक्त हनुमान जी की जय भक्ति सर्व विघ्न विनाशन कृष्ण भगवान की जय गंगा माय जमुना माय की जय तुलसी महारानी वृंद देव भक्ति देव की जय श्रीमती राधा रानी की जय समवेत भक्त वृंद की जय निताय गौरी प्रेमानंदे हरि बोल all glories to somebody bodies all glories to somebody bodies all glories to somebody bodies all glories all glories to Shri Guru
Namaste Narashinhaya
Namaste tanka
ito naslingha parato naslingho yato yato yamitato naslingha
jata jata jamita isinga
bahir naslingho ridahe naslingha Narasingha Mardim Sharanam Prapadye
Narasingha Mardim Sharanam Prapadye
Tavakara Kamalavare Nakam Adbhuta Singham Dalita Hiranyakashipu Tano Bringam Keshavadita Narahari Rupa Jaya Jagadisha Hare Jaya Jagadisha Hare Jaya Jagadisha Hare
Baba Kara Kamala Bare Nakam Adbhuta Singha Dalita Hiranyakashipu Tanabhinga Kesavadita Naradirupa Jai Jagadisha Re Jai Jagadisha Re Jai Jagadisha Re
Jaya Keshavadrita Narahari Rupa Jaya Jagadisha Hare Jaya Jagadisha Hare Jaya Jagadisha Hare
Jaya Kesavadrita Naradirupa Jai Jagadisha Re Jai Jagadisha Re Jai Jagadisha Re
Jaya Lakshmi Narasingha Jaya Lakshmi Narasingha Lakshmi Narasingha Jaya Lakshmi Narasingha
Jaya Nisingha Re Jaya Singha Re Jaya Singha Re Jaya Nisingha Re
Jaya Narsingha Dev Jaya Narsingha Dev Narsingha Dev Jaya Narsingha Dev
Jaya Nisingha Re Jaya Nisingha Re Jaya Nisingha Re Jaya Nisingha Re
Jaya Prahlad Maharaj Jaya Prahlad Maharaj Prahlad Maharaj Jaya Prahlad Maharaj
Jaya Prahlad Maharaj Jaya Prahlad Maharaj Jaya Prahlad Maharaj Jaya Prahlad
Nitai Gaura Hari Bol Hari Bol Hari Bol Nitai Gaura Hari Bol
Nitai Gaura Hari Bol
Hari Bol
Hari Bol Nitai Gaura
Shingadev Bhagavan Ki Jai Prahlad Maharaj
Jai Shingadev Bhagavan Shri Vrindai Tulasi Bai Priyai Kesava Satya Vishnu Bhakti Prati Devi Shatavataye Namo Namaha Vrindaya Vrindai Tulasi Bai Priyai Kesava Satya Vishnu Bhakti Prati Devi Shatavataye Namo Namaha वृंदाई तुलसी देवाई प्रिय केशव सत्य विष्णु भक्ति प्रदे देवी सतभक्ताय नमो नमः। श्रीमती तुलसी महारानी वृंद देवी की जय।
Namo Nama Tulasi Krishna Preyasi Namo Nama Tulasi Krishna Preyasi Namo Nama
Tulasi Krishna Preyasi Namo Namo
Radha Krishna Seva Babo Eya Vilasi
Radha Krishna Seva Baba Heya Vilasi
Radha Krishna Seva Babo Eya Vilasi
Radha Krishna Seva Baba
Shitomara Sharanaloy Tara Vansha Purnahoy Kripa Kori Korotare Vrindavanabasi
Kara Kare Vrindavanabasi
Moraya Vilas Vilas Kunje Diyava
Moraya Vilas Vilas Kunje Diyava
Nayane Heribo Sada Jugala Uparasi
Aminayane Ribosada Jugala Ruparasi
Eni Vedana Taro Sakiranugata Kara
Eni Vedana Dhara Sakirayano Gatakara
Sevadi Kara Diye Koroni Jadasi
Sevayade Kara Diye Karani Jadasi
Zina Krishna Dase Koi Eye Namorahoy
Ina Krishna Daseka Eyena Mora
Shri Radha Govinda Preme Sadaya Navasi
Shri Radha Govinda Preme Sadayena Vasi
Shri Radha Govinda Preme Sadaya Navasi
Shri Radha Govinda Preme Sadayena Vasi
Yani kani cha papani brahmatyati kani cha tani tani pranashanti pradakshina pade pade
Dani kani sapapani brahmatyati kani cha tani tani pranasanti pradakshina pade pade
Yani kani cha papani brahmatyati kani cha tani tani pranashanti pradakshina pade pade
Dani kani sapapani brahmatyati kani cha tani tani pranasanti pradakshina pade pade
Yani kani cha papani brahmatyati kani cha tani tani pranashanti pradakshina pade pade
Kani sapapani brahmatyati kani sa tani tani pranasanti pradakshina pade pade
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Jaya Tulsi Maharani, Jaya Tulsi Maharani, Jaya Tulsi Maharani, Jaya Tulsi Maharani.
Tulsi Maharani Jaya, Tulsi Maharani Jaya, Tulsi Maharani.
Jaya Vrinda Devi, Jaya Vrinda Devi, Jaya Vrinda Devi, Jaya Vrinda Devi.
Jaya Vrinda Devi, Jaya Vrinda Devi, Jaya Vrinda Devi, Jaya.
Nitai Gaura Haribol, 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 Nitai Gaura Haribol.
Haribo, Haribo, Nitai Gaura Haribo. Shri Vrindai Tulasi Devai, Priyaya Kesava Satya, Vishnu Bhakti Prade Devi, Shatavataye Namo Namaha. Vrindayai Tulasi Devai, Priyaya Kesava Satya, Vishnu Bhakti Prade Devi, Shatavataye Namo Namaha. Brindai tulasi devai Priya ke sabha satya Vishnu bhakti prare devi Shatavatai namo namah. Shrimati Tulasi Maharani Vrinda Devi ki jai. O Tulsi, beloved Krishna, I bow before you again and again. My desire to obtain the service of Sri Radha and Krishna. Overtake shelter of his wishes fulfilled. Bestow your mercy upon him, you make him resident of Vrindavan. My desire is that you also give me a residence in pleasure groves of Sri Vrindavan now. Thus within my vision I will always behold the beautiful pastimes of Radha and Krishna. I beg you to make me a follower of Kavita, Mrs. Obraj. Please give me the privilege of devotional service and make me own my servant. This very fallen and lowly servant of Krishna praise. May I always sing and love Shri Radha. Jai Shrimati Tulasi Maharani Vrinda Devi ki jai. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu Shri Krishna ki jai. Chaitanya Janam Bhava Maha Shri Akari Vachandi Kavitaranam Vidyavadhudevanam Ananda Mudi Bhajanam Vidipadam Punam Tata Sarvatmaslam Param Purandeti Shri Krishna Sankirtanam Nam Nam Akari Vaudha Ida Sarva Shakti Tatrapi Panyanta Shvanena Kala Itagrisi Tabakupam Purnamati Buddhaidvani Desam Yajanina Yuragaha Dinadapi Sumichena Tarodapi Sahishnuna The private condition of life of the people of birth and death. We thank you for the prime benediction for humanity for the life. For this praise made the benediction known. It is the life of all transcendental knowledge. It increases the ocean of transcendental bliss and enables us to fully test the nectar for which all is anxious. Oh my Lord, your holy name alone can rain all benediction to living beings. And thus you have hundreds and millions of names like Krishna Govinda. And these transcendental names you have invested all your transcendental energies. There's not even hard and fast rules for chanting these names. Oh my Lord, out of kindness we enable us to easily reach by your holy names. But I'm so unfortunate that I have no attraction for them. Once you chant the holy name of the Lord in a humble state of mind, think oneself a Lord and strong and sweet. One should be more turned than a tree, devoid of all sense of false prestige,
disobey the orders of the spiritual master, to blaspheme Vedic literature in pursuance of the Vedic version, Hare Krishna as imagination, to give some interpretation on the holy name of the Lord, to commit sinful activities in the strength of chanting the holy name. Consider chanting of Hare Krishna as one of the auspicious ritualistic activities which are offered in the Vedas as fruitive activities of karma kanda, to instruct the faithless person about the glories of the holy name, to not have complete faith in the chanting of the holy name, and to maintain material attachments, even after understanding so many instructions in this matter. It is also an offense to be inattentive while chanting. Every devotee who claims to be a Vaishnava must carefully guard against these 10 offenses in order to quickly achieve the desired success, Krishna Prema. Now let us offer our most humble obeisances unto all the Vaishnava devotees of the Lord. They are just like desire trees that can fulfill the desires of everyone, and they are full of compassion for the fallen conditioned souls. Vanchakalpatarabhyascha kripasindhubhyevcha Patitanam pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. Namo Vishnupadaya Namaste Saraswati. Srimad Bhagavatam Grantaraj Ki Jai. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Janmad Yasya Yato Nivayat Itaratas Chatesu Avigyaswara Tene Brahma Hridaya Adikavaye Muyanti Yatsurayaha Tejo Varimadam Yata Vinimayo Yatra Trisargo Misha Damna Svena Sada Nirastaku Hakam Satyam Param Dimahi. O my Lord Shri Krishna, son of Vasudeva, O all-pervading personality of Godhead, I offer my respectful obeisances unto you. I meditate upon Lord Shri Krishna because he is the absolute truth and the primeval cause of all causes, of the creation, sustenance, and destruction of the manifested universe. He is directly and indirectly conscious of all manifestations, and he is independent because there is no other cause beyond him. It is he only who first imparted the Vedic knowledge unto the heart of Brahmaji, the original living being. By him, even the great sages and demigods are placed into illusion, as one is bewildered by the illusory representations of water seen on fire or land seen on water. Only because of him do the material universes, temporarily manifested by the reactions of the three modes of nature, appear factual, although they are unreal. I therefore meditate upon him, Lord Shri Krishna, who is eternally existent in the transcendental abode, which is forever free from the illusory representations of the material world. I meditate upon him, for he is the absolute truth. Dharma pujita kaitovotra paramo nirmatsaranam satam vedyam vastavamatra vastu shivadam tapatrayom bulanam Shrimad Bhagavate Mahamani Krite Kim va Purishwaraha Sadyo Hridi Avarudyate Tra Kriti Bihi Sususubhistakshanat, completely rejecting all religious activities which are materially motivated. This Bhagavata Purana propounds the highest truth, which is understandable by those devotees who are fully pure in heart. The highest truth is reality distinguished from illusion for the welfare of all. Such truth uproots the threefold mysteries. This beautiful Bhagavatam, compiled by the great sage Vyasadeva in his maturity, is in itself righteous in itself. Is sufficient in itself, yes. Yeah, for God realizes. What is the need of any other scripture? As soon as one attentively and submissively hears the message of Bhagavatam, by this culture of knowledge, the Supreme Lord is established within his eyes and within his heart. Nigama kalpataror galitam phalam Sukhamakad Amrita Dravya Samyutam. Pibata Bhagavatam Rasamalayam. Muhur Ahoraska Bhuvibhavaka. O expert and thoughtful man, relish Srimad Bhagavatam, the mature fruit of the desire to read Vedic literatures. It emanated from the lips of Sri Sukadeva Goswami. Therefore, this fruit has become even more tasteful. Although its nectarian juice is already relishable for all, including liberated souls. Shinvatam Swatkata Krishna Punya Shravana Kirtana Hridyantak Stohi Bhadrani Vidunati Srihitsatam. To hear about Krishna from Vedic literatures, or to hear from him directly through the Bhagavad Gita, is itself righteous activity. And for one who hears about Krishna, Lord Krishna, who is dwelling in everyone's heart, acts as a best wishing friend and purifies the devotee who constantly engages in hearing of him. Nastapresu Bhadresu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavati Utamasloke Bhakti Bhavati Naistaki. In this way, a devotee naturally develops his dormant transcendental knowledge. As he hears more about Krishna from the Bhagavatam and from the devotees, he becomes fixed in the devotional service of the Lord. Tajarajastamo bhavo kamalobhadayaschaye chete tairanavyadam stitvam sattve prasiditi. By development of devotional service, one becomes freed from the modes of passion and ignorance, and thus material lust and avarice are diminished. Evam prasana manaso bhagavat bhakti yogataha bhagavat tattva vijnanam mukta sangha. When these impurities are wiped away, the candidate remains steady in his position of pure goodness, becomes enlivened by devotional service, and understands the science of God perfectly. Vidyate hridaya grantes chidyante sarvasamsaya shiyante jasyakarmani jista evat manisware. Thus Bhakti Yoga severs the hard knot of material affection and enables one to come at once to the stage of a samsayam samagrama, understanding of the Supreme Absolute Truth, Personality, Godhead. Therefore, only by hearing from Krishna or from his devotee in Krishna consciousness can one understand the science of Krishna. Shri Guru Vastika prayers, Ki Jai, the spiritual master is receiving benediction from the ocean of mercy, just as a cloud pours water on a forest fire to extinguish it. So the spiritual master delivers the materially afflicted world by extinguishing the blazing fire of material existence. I offer my respectful obeisance at the lotus feet of such a spiritual master who is an ocean of auspicious qualities. Chanting the holy name, dancing in ecstasy, singing and playing musical instruments. The spiritual master is always gladdened by the Sankirtan movement of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, because he is relishing the mellows of pure devotion within his mind. Sometimes his hair stands on end. He feels quivering in his body, and tears flow from his eyes like waves. I offer my respectful obeisance to the lotus feet of such a spiritual master. The spiritual master is always engaged in the temple worship of Shri Radha and Krishna. He also engages his disciples in such worship. They dress the deities in beautiful clothes and ornaments, clean their temple, and perform other similar worship of the Lord. I offer my respectful obeisance to the lotus feet of such a spiritual master. The spiritual master is always offering Krishna 4 kinds of delicious food. Analyzes that which is licked, chewed, drunk, and sucked. When the spiritual master sees that the devotees are satisfied by eating Bhagavat Prasada, He is satisfied. I offer my respectful obeisance unto the lotus feet of such a spiritual master. The spiritual master is always eager to hear and chant about the unlimited conjugal pastimes of Radhika and Madhava and their qualities, names, and forms. The spiritual master aspires to relish these at every moment. I offer my respectful obeisance unto the lotus feet of such a spiritual master. The spiritual master is very dear because he is expert at assisting the gopis who at different times make different tasteful arrangements for the perfection of Radha and Krishna's conjugal loving affairs within the groves of Vrindavan. I offer my most humble obeisance unto the lotus feet of such a spiritual master. The spiritual master is to be honored as much as the Supreme Lord because he is the most confidential servitor of the Lord. This is acknowledged in all revealed scriptures and followed by all authorities. Therefore, I offer my respectful obeisance unto the lotus feet of such a spiritual master who is a bona fide representative of Shri Hare Krishna. By the mercy of the spiritual master, one receives the benediction of Krishna. Without the grace of the spiritual master, one cannot make any advancement. Therefore, I should always remember and praise the spiritual master. At least 3 times a day, I should offer my respectful obeisance unto the lotus feet of my spiritual master. Shri Brahma Samhita ki jai, Ishvara Parama Krishna Satchitananda Vigraha Anadiraja Govinda Sarva Karana Karanam. Chintamani Prakata Satma Sakalpa Vriksha Laksha Vrite Susurabir Abhipaliyantam Lakshmi Sahasra Satasambhrama Sevyamanam Govindam Adi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami Vainam Kvanantam Aravinda Dalayataksam Arhavatam Samasitam Buddha Sundarangam Kandarpakoti Kamaniya Vishesha Sobham Govindam Adi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami Alola Chandra Kala Sadvanavaya Vamsi Ratnam Pranayakeli Kalavilasam Shyamam Jivanga Lalita Niyata Prakasam Govindam Adi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami Angani Yasya Sakalandriya Vrittimanti Pasyanti Panti Kalyanti Chiram Jaganti Ananda Chinmaya Sadujvala Vigrahasya Govindam Adi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami Advaitam Ajutam Anadim Ananta Rupam Adyam Purana Purusham Navayovanam Cha Vede Sudurlabham Adurlabham Atma Bhakto Govindam Adi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami Pantastu Koti Satavatsara Sampragamyo Vayoratapi Manaso Munipungamanam Sopyasti Yat Prapadasim Yabhijintya Tattve Govindam Adi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami Ekupya Sora Chayatum Jagadanda Kotim Yaschakti Rasti Jagadanda Chayaya Danta Andantarasta Paramanu Chayantarastam Govindam Adi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami Yad Bhava Bhavita Diyam Manajastrataiva Samprapya Rupa Mahima Sanayana Bhusaha Suktaryameva nigama pratitastuvanti. Govindamadi purusham tamaham bhajami. Ananda chinmaya rasa pratibhavitabhis. Tabirya eva nijarupataya kalabi. Goloka eva nivasata kilatma bhuto. Govindamadi purusham tamaham bhajami. Premanjana churita bhakti vilochanena. Santak sadaiva hidayesu vilokayanti. Yam shama sundaram achintya gunaswarupam. Govindam adi purisham tamaham bhajami. Ramadi murti sukalani amenatistan. Nanavataram akarod bhuvanesu kintu. Krishna swayam samabhavat paramam pumam yo. Govindam adi purisham tamaham bhajami. Yasya prabha prabhavato jagadanda koti. Koti svasesu vasudadi vibhuti pinam. Tad brahma niskalam anantam ashesha bhutam. Govindam adi purisham tamaham bhajami. Maya hiyasya jagadanda satani sute. Trigun yatad vishayaveda vitayamana. Sattva valambi parasattvam visuddha sattvam. Govindam adi purusham tamaham bhajami. Ananda chinmaya rasat mataya manasu. Yad praninam patifalam smaratam upetya. Lilayatena bhuvanani jayaya jasram. Govindam adi purusham tamaham bhajami. Golokalamni nijadamni talechatasya. Devi mahesa haridama sute sutesu. Tete prabhava nichaya vitascha yena. Govindam adi purusham tamaham bhajami. Shristi stiti pralaya sadhava saktireka. Jayeva yasya bhuvanani vibharti durga. Ichana rupam apiyasya. Ichana rupam apiyasya chachesta tesa. Govindam adi purusham tamaham bhajami. Shiram yata dadi vikara visesa yoga. Sanjayate nahitata pritagasti heto. Yasambutam apitata samapaiti karyat. Govindam adi purusham tamaham bhajami. Deepachareva hitasantanam abhyapetya. Deepayate vivita hetu samana dharma. Yastadrig eva hicha vishnu taya vibhati. Govindam adi purusham tamaham bhajami. Yakarna narna vajale bhajatisma yoga. Nidram ananta jagadanda saruma kupaha. Adhara shaktim avalambya param swamurtim. Govindam adi purusham tamaham bhajami. Yasyaika nisvasita kalamata valambya. Jivanti loma vilaja jagadanda nataha. Vishnu mahansa yasya kalabhisheshu. Govindam adi purusham tamaham bhajami. Vasvam yatasma sakalesu nijesu tejaha. Sriyam kiyat prakadiyat apitad vadatra. Brahmaya esa jagadanda vidana karta. Govindam adi purusham tamaham bhajami. Yat pada palava yugam vinidaya kumbha. Dvande pranama samayesab kanadi rajaha. Vignan vihantam alamasya jagatrayasya. Govindam adi purusham tamaham bhajami. Agnir mahi gaganam ambu maruti sascha. Kalastatatma manasiti. Kalastatatma manasiti jagatrayani. Yasmad vibhavanti vishanti yamcha. Govinda Madi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami. Yaschak Sudesa Savita Sakalagrahanam. Raja Samasta Suramurti Rasesa Tejaha. Yasyagaya Brahmati Sambrita Chakra. Sambrita Kala Chakra. Govinda Madi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami. Dharmo Tapapa Nichaya Sutayastapamsi. Brahma Dikita Patagaba Deyascha Jivaha. Yadata Matra Vibhava Prakata Prabhava. Govinda Madi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami. Yastvindra Gopa Matavendra Mahoswakarma. Bandhanurupa Falabhajana Matanoti. Karmani Nirdahati Kintu Chabhakti Bhajam. Govinda Madi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami. Yam Krodha Kama Sahaja Pranayadi Bitti. Vatsalya Moha Guru Gaura Vasevya Bhavahai. Sanchintya Tasya Sadrasim Tanamapurete. Govinda Madi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami. Shriya Kanta Kanta Parama Purusha Kalpataravo. Kruma Bhumis Chintamani Ganamayi Toyam Amritam. Kata Ganam Natyam Gamanam Apivam Sipriya Saki. Chid Anandam Jyoti Param Apitad Asvadyam Apicha. Sayatra Shiradi Bihi Shravati Sirabi Vyascha Sumahan. Nime Sardakyo Vavrajati Nahiya Trapi Samaya. Bhaje Svita Dvipam Tamaham Iha Golakam Itiyam. Vidantaste Santakshiti Viralachara Katipaye. Ishupanishadi Ki Jai Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachate Purnasya Purnama Adaya Purnameva Vasishyate. Ishavaishamidam Sarvam Jatkinja Jagatyam Jagat Tinatak Tina Punjitaha Magridaha Krisasveddanam. Kurvani Vaha Karmani Jajiva Chek Chatam Samaha Ivam Tvayi Nanditetos na Karma Lipyate Nare. Asurya Namate Loka Andena Tamasambritaha Tamste Pritya Vigachanti Eke Chatma Hano Janaha. Anijadika Manaso Javio Nena Devam Apravam Pravam Rasata Adavato Nyana Teti Tistat Tasmin Apomata Visvedadati. Tade Jati Tane Jati Tadure Tadvantike Tadantarasya Sarvasya Tadu Sarvasya Sarvayataha. Estu Sarvani Bhutani Atmani Venupashyati Sarvabhute Suchatmanam Tatuna Vijagupsate. Yasmin Sarvani Bhutani Atme Vibhud Vijanataha Tatrako Mahakat Kahasuka Ekadvam Anupasyataha. Saprega Chukramakaya Mavrinam Asnaviram Sudamapabhavivam Kavir Manisi Paribu Swayambhu Yatatat Yaturatan Vyadadat Chasvatipyaha Samabhyaha. Andam tamaha pravisanti ye vidyam upasyate tato bhuvyai vate tamo ya vidyam rataha. Anyadevahur vidyaya anyadahura vidyaya iti susruma dhiranam yenastad vichaksire. Vidyam cha yas yastad vedubhayam saha vidyaya miritim tirtva vidyayam ritamasnute. Antam tamaha pravisanti ye sambhutim upasate tato bhuyavate tamo yayu sambhutam rataha. Anyadevahur sambhavat anyadahur sambhavat iti susrumadhiranam yenastad vichaksire. Sambhutim cha vinasam cha yastad vedubhayam saha vinasena militam tirtva sambhutam ritamasnute. Hiranmayana patrena satyasya piyatam mukam tatvam pusam apavrinu satyadharma yadristaye. Pusane kaseyama surya prajapataya vyuharasmin samahatejo yatte rupam kalyanatamam tate pasyami yo savaso purushaha sohamasmi. Vayuranilam amritam atedam basmantam sariram om kratus smara kritam smara kratus smara kritam smara. Om Agnenaya Supatara Yasman Vishmani Deva Vayunani Vidvan Yo Dajmas Juhuranami No Bhuistam Te Nama Utim Vedama Om Tatsat. Srimad Bhagavatam Canto 2 Chapter 7 Verse number 8. Vida Sapat Udita Patibir Antirajno. Balo Pisan Upagatas Tapase Vanani. Plasma Adadruvagatim Grinate Prasano. Devyastuvanti Munayo Yad Upar Yadas Dat. Translation by Srila Prabhupada. Being insulted by sharp words spoken by the co-wife of the king, even in his presence, Prince Dhruva, though only a boy, took to severe penances in the forest, and the Lord, being satisfied by his prayer, awarded him the Dhruva planet, which is worshipped by great sages both upward and downward. Purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. When he was only 5 years old, Prince Dhruva, a great devotee and the son of Maharaj Uttanapada, was sitting on the lap of his father. His stepmother did not like the king's patting her stepson, so she dragged him out, saying that he could not claim to sit on the lap of the king because he was not born out of her womb. The little boy felt insulted by this act of his stepmother, nor did his father make any protest, for he was too attached to his second wife. After this incident, Prince Dhruva went to his own mother and complained. His real mother also could not take any step against this insulting behavior, and so she wept. The boy inquired from his mother how he could sit on the royal throne of his father. The poor queen replied that only the Lord could help him. The boy inquired where the Lord could be seen, and the queen replied that it is said that the Lord is sometimes seen by great sages in a dense forest. The child prince decided to go into the forest to perform severe penances in order to achieve his objective. Prince Dhruva performed a stringent type of penance under the instruction of his spiritual master, Sri Narada Muni, who was specifically deputed for this purpose by the personality of Godhead. Prince Dhruva was initiated by Narada into chanting the hymn composed of 18 letters, namely Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. The Lord Vasudeva incarnated himself as Prishni Garbha, the personality of Godhead, with 4 hands, and awarded the prince a specific planet above the 7 stars. Prince Dhruva, after achieving success in his undertaking, saw the Lord face to face, and he was satisfied that all his needs were fulfilled. The planet awarded to Prince Dhruva Maharaj is a fixed Vaikuntha planet installed in the material atmosphere by the will of the Supreme Lord, Vasudeva. This planet, although within the material world, will not be annihilated at the time of devastation, but will remain fixed in its place, and because it is a Vaikuntha planet, never to be annihilated. It is worshipped even by the denizens of the 7 stars situated below the Dhruva planet, as well as by the planets which are even above the Dhruva planet. Maharshi Bhrigu's planet is situated above the Dhruva planet. So the Lord incarnated himself as Prishni Garbha, just to satisfy a pure devotee of the Lord, and Prince Dhruva achieved this perfection simply by chanting the hymn mentioned above, after being initiated by another pure devotee, Narada. A serious personality can thus achieve the highest perfection of meeting the Lord and attain his objective simply by being guided by a pure devotee, who automatically approaches by dint of one's serious determination to meet the Lord by all means. The description of Prince Dhruva's activities can be read in detail in the 4th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Yeah. What? What? Really? Okay. Kamam dahanti kritino nanuro sadristya rosam dahantam utate utana dahant asadyam soyam yadantaram alam pravisham bibeti kamam gatam nu punar asya manag shrayeta. Translation by Srila Prabhupada. Great stalwarts like Lord Shiva can, by their wrathful glances, overcome lust and vanquish him. Yet they cannot be free from the overwhelming effects of their own wrath. Such wrath can never enter into the heart of him, the Lord, who is above all this. So how can lust take shelter in his mind? Purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Prabhupada, Srila Prabhupada. When Lord Shiva was engaged in severely austere meditation, Cupid, the demigod of lust, threw his arrow of sex desire. Lord Shiva, thus being angry at him, glanced at Cupid in great wrath, and at once the body of Cupid was annihilated. Although Lord Shiva was so powerful, he was unable to get free from the effects of such wrath. But in the behavior of Lord Vishnu, there is no incident of such wrath at any time. On the contrary, Bhrigu tested the tolerance of the Lord by purposely kicking his chest. But instead of being angry at Bhrigu, the Lord begged his pardon, saying that Bhrigu leg might have been badly hurt because his chest is too hard. The Lord has the sign of the foot of Brigopada on the mark of tolerance. The Lord, therefore, is never affected by any kind of wrath, so how can there be any place for lust, which is less strong than wrath? When lust or desire is not fulfilled, there is the appearance of wrath. But in the absence of wrath, how can there be any place for lust? The Lord is known as Aptakama, or one who can fulfill his desires by himself. He does not require anyone's help to satisfy his desires. The Lord is unlimited, and therefore his desires are also unlimited. All living entities, but the Lord are limited in every respect. How then can the limited satisfy the desires of the unlimited? The conclusion is that the absolute personality of Godhead has neither lust nor anger. And even if there is sometimes a show of lust and anger by the absolute, it should be considered an absolute benediction. Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Great stalwarts like Lord Shiva can, by their wrathful glances, overcome lust and vanquish him. Yet they cannot be free from the overwhelming effects of their own wrath. Such wrath can never enter into the heart of him, the Lord, who is above all this. So how can lust take shelter in his mind? So this is very interesting verse because there's a very big point made in it, and that is, first of all, Krishna is above lust and wrath or anger. So how do we know that? Because it says in the Bhagavad Gita, 2nd chapter, 62nd and 63rd verse, Dayato Visham Pumsa Sangate Subhajayate Sangat Sanjayate Kama Kama Kroda Bhajayate Krodahad Bhavati Samaha Samaha Spriti Viprama Spritimam Sat Buddhina So Buddhina Sat Panasyate. And it says, from anger complete delusion arises. It says, while contemplating objects of senses, one develops attachment for them, and from such attachment lust develops, and from lust anger arises. So here we see the progression of contemplating objects of senses incorrectly. All objects of the senses are non-different than Krishna, because it's made, all these things are made from Krishna's energies. Therefore, we should not see the external thing, but see the internal connection of that thing to Krishna through the soul. So, we are trained to see external things. So, when, let's say, some beautiful lady walks into a room, everyone is noticing the different parts of her body. But the devotee doesn't see that. He sees that she has an eternal soul, and that soul is the eternal servant of Krishna. So there's two ways of seeing externally and seeing internally. Internally, if you go, like I said, less than 1/8 of an inch below the skin, you see horror. You see blood, guts, stool, urine. But if you keep going internally, you'll see the soul, and you'll see Paramatma. So that's what the devotee sees. He sees the soul's relationship to Paramatma. Whereas the materialist, he'll see the external 1/8 of an inch of skin, and then if he's a doctor, he dissects the body and sees all the gore and all the horror of the inside of the body. So that's not seeing. That's being misled by exterior things. One must see through the eyes of Shastra. Right? So therefore, in the Shastra it says that in the second chapter again, which is like what you would call the summary of the whole Bhagavad Gita, it explains that the soul is the real person, not the body. And it says, Dehinosmin yata dehe komaran jovanam jara. Yeah, so that verse explains that through different stages of life, the body is changing. And these changes of the body are temporary things. Tata dehantara praptir dirastatra namuyate. Such a dira, or such a stoic person, is not bewildered by such changes of the body. They see that within the body there's a soul that passes from one body to another in this life and at the moment of death. So therefore, the devotee is trained to see things properly, where the non-devotee is misled by modern education to see things incorrectly. So if you see things incorrectly, how can you make right decisions in life? It's not possible. And Krishna also says, Natvevaham jatunasam natvam nemi janadi bahat nasartraiva nachaiva na bhavishyama sarve vayama takparam. Never was there a time when I did not exist, nor you, nor all these kings, nor in the future shall any of us cease to exist. So therefore the real thing is the soul. It's not the body, because the body comes and goes. Okay, so these points are important if one wants to be able to control lust and anger. But we can see what happens when one loses control of their able to control. There are corollary effects that will derail the person from the path of devotional service. Like in the case of Dhruva Maharaj, when his brother was killed by the Mongolians, or the Yakshas, the sons of Kuvera, he became extremely angry, and he made a decision to kill them all. And as he started killing so many of these persons, in other words, it was not just killing the person that killed his brother, he was killing all of them. So Kubera came and begged him to please stop this slaughter. And by talking to Kubera, little by little, his anger diminished, and then he stopped doing it. So the corollary effect of uncontrolled anger is horror. And we see that. There's road rage, where a person who doesn't know somebody else, but because that person sort of cut them off the road, or went past them, or something happened while they were both driving, and they stop and they fight, and the person kills the other person. Somebody doesn't know. Just because he got road rage, meaning he had uncontrollable anger. See? And also sometimes a husband will kill the wife, or the wife will kill the husband because of rage. They lose control of their mind. So in the case of Lord Shiva, he lost control of his anger, and he burned Cupid to death. But in the case of Lord Vishnu, even though Bhrigu Muni jumped on his chest, stomped on his chest, right, he did not get upset. And then Bhrigu Muni, who was deputed by the demigods to understand who is actually the personality of Godhead, jumped off his chest and bowed down and begged for forgiveness. Of course, Lakshmi Devi did not like what happened, and she felt very unhappy because she was not able to stop Bhrigu Muni from doing this. However, Lord Vishnu himself was not unhappy, because he's teaching that we should always respect brahmanas, and brahmanas should never be punished. And that's not an excuse for brahmanas to act like jerks. but it's to show complete respect for genuine brahmanas. Now, the false brahmanas, or the Dvija Bandhus, those who are sons of brahmanas but who have never developed the right qualities of Brahminical culture, we should never disrespect anyone, but they should not be accepted as a bona fide brahmana. But another reason why we should always respect all people is because if today a person is not a devotee and you insult him, but later on that person becomes a devotee, you will be, or we will be, retroactively held responsible for Vaishnava aparadh. So it's a dangerous thing, disrespecting a person, because if they become a pure devotee in the future, we will be responsible for Vaishnava aparadh. So therefore, we should respect all people. Now, let's say someone insults Krishna or someone insults Prabhupada. Well, we can correct them by becoming angry and explaining to them, if they are willing to hear, why they should apologize. And if they're not willing to hear, well, either we cut their tongue out or we walk away from them and avoid their association. So I would say walk away and avoid their association, because you cut their tongue out, you probably kill them, and you'd be prosecuted for murder. Right? This concept of seeing properly is called darshan, and it's actually the word for philosophy in Sanskrit, and very rightfully so, because we need to be able to see things correctly through the shastric evidence. So we're being taught to see things correctly when we read Bhagavad Gita, Krishna's words, and Prabhupada's purports. The purport is necessary because we can misinterpret the verse very easily because of our limited knowledge. So therefore, simply hearing the verses is not enough. You have to hear the purport also, because Prabhupada has distilled the purports of all the great acharyas. Okay, so then when in second chapter again, it says, we see in Dhruva Maharaj a remarkable quality. He was only 5 years old, and his stepmother Suruchi really seriously insulted him and made him feel horrible. But he was the first son of King Uttanapan, and he was supposed to be the heir of the kingdom. But Suruchi was jealous of him and insulted him in this terrible way, so that he would just go away and that her son would become the king. So, but Suruchi also, like Dhruva's mother, gave him some good advice. He said, if you're not satisfied, then you just go and talk to Krishna, or you find Narayana. He'll help you. So, and then his mother told him the same thing. So he was a Kshatriya. He's only 5 years old, but he's a Kshatriya. He has that Kshatriya, mindset. So he became determined to go by himself, a 5-year-old little boy, into the forest, into the deep forest, which is very dangerous, to find Lord Vishnu. And when Lord Vishnu, who's the super soul, saw this tremendous determination of this boy, he sent Narada Muni to meet him. And Narada, when he met him, he said, look, you're only a little kid, you're only 5 years old. Just go back to your mommy. When you grow up, you can come back here. He said, no, you go away, I'm staying. So when Narada Muni saw how determined he was, so he said, okay, then I'll explain to you how you can see the Lord. And he taught him the mantra, Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. And he gave him a 6-step extreme tapasya to perform, where he eventually gave up eating and drinking water, and then he gave up breathing also. And at that point, he was standing on one foot only. He had given up eating and drinking, and then he gave up breathing also in six steps. And then he began to lean over with his one leg, and the whole universe tipped. He had become so powerful, and all the demigods were freaking out. They were in extreme distress of what's happening. So then Lord Vishnu came. He always saves the demigods. And he appeared in front of Dhruva Maharaj. But Dhruva Maharaj kept his eyes closed because he was meditating on the form of Lord Vishnu that Narada Muni had described to him. But then, in order for him to open his eyes, Lord Vishnu made him disappeared from his mental, focus, and he opened his eyes at that point because he couldn't see the Lord anymore. And he opened his eyes and he saw the same Lord standing right in front of him, Prishnigarbha. And he was stunned and he couldn't speak. And the Lord touched him with his conch shell, and then he was able to speak beautiful prayers glorifying the Lord. Now you see why knowledge is something revealed. It's not something learned. He didn't go to school to learn Sanskrit and speak those prayers, but he was blessed by the Lord with the knowledge to do that. And that's called the Dhruva Stuti. I think it's 12 or 15 prayers. They're absolutely gorgeous, wonderful prayers that we should recite. And at that point, the Lord said, okay, what do you want? You tell me what you want. I'll give you any benediction. And this is a very important part of the Bhagavatam. And I'm going to read some of it because, like Prahlad Maharaj, Dhruva Maharaj is a great devotee. And in the fourth canto, fourth canto, 12th chapter, verse number 9. All those verses are wonderful, but we'll just skip to verse number 9 to get to the main point. When the Lord asked Dhruva to take any benediction, what does Dhruva say? He says, the son of Idavida, Lord Kuvera. Lord Kuvera now comes to speak to Dhruva Maharaj. And Lord Kuvera was very pleased, and happily he gave Dhruva Maharaj the benediction he wanted. Thereafter he disappeared from Dhruva's presence, and Dhruva Maharaj returned to his capital city. So Kuvera, who is known as the son of Idavida, was very pleased with Dhruva Maharaj because he did not ask him for anything materially enjoyable. Kuvera is one of the demigods, so one may put forward the argument, why did Dhruva Maharaj take a benediction from a demigod? The answer is that for a Vaishnava, there is no objection to taking a benediction from a demigod if it is favorable for advancing Krishna consciousness. Now, when the Lord asked him to take a benediction, Dhruva said, my dear Lord, I was looking for pieces of cut glass, but I found a diamond, and therefore I'm completely satisfied just by seeing you. But later on, Kuvera comes, and of course Dhruva stopped killing his sons, or his descendants, and so Kuvera wanted to give him a benediction also. So, therefore, why did Dhruva Maharaj take a benediction from a demigod? The answer is that for a Vaishnava, there's no objection to taking a benediction from a demigod if it is favorable for advancing Krishna consciousness. Now Prabhupada gives another example. The gopis, for example, worship Katyayani, a demigoddess. She's one form of Durga Mata. But the only benediction they wanted from the goddess was to have Krishna as their husband. A Vaishnava is not interested in asking any benediction from the demigods, nor is he interested in asking benedictions from the Supreme Personality of Godhead. It is said in the Bhagavatam that liberation can be offered by the Supreme Person, but even if a pure devotee is offered liberation by the Supreme Lord, he refuses to accept it. Dhruva Maharaj did not ask Kuvera for transference to the spiritual world, which is called liberation. He simply asked that wherever he would remain, whether in the spiritual or material world, he would always remember the Supreme Personality of Godhead. A Vaishnava is always respectful to everyone. So when Kuvera offered him a benediction, he did not refuse it. But he wanted something which would be favorable to his advancement in Krishna consciousness. This is a very interesting point. Very, very interesting point. Then, in text 10, it says, as long as he remained at home, Dhruva Maharaj performed many great ceremonial sacrifices in order to please the enjoyer of all sacrifices, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Prescribed ceremonial sacrifices are especially meant to please Lord Vishnu, who is the objective of all such sacrifices and who awards the resultant benedictions. So therefore, every day should be a festival in Krishna consciousness, where we chant Hare Krishna and dance and joyfully praise the Lord with choice poetry by reciting verses that were spoken by great devotees like Dhruva Maharaj and Prahlad Maharaj. And in the purport it says, in Bhagavad Gita 3.9, it is said, Yajnartat karmano yatra loko yam karma bandhanai. One should act or work only in order to please the Supreme Lord, otherwise one becomes entangled in the resultant reactions. According to the four divisions of Varna and Ashrama, Kshatriyas and Vaishyas are especially advised to perform great ceremonial sacrifices and to distribute their accumulated wealth very liberally. Dhruva Maharaj, as a king, an ideal Kshatriya, performed many such sacrifices, giving very liberally in charity. Kshatriyas and Vaishyas are supposed to earn their money and accumulate great riches. Sometimes they do it by acting sinfully. Kshatriyas are meant to rule over a country. Dhruva Maharaj, for example, in the course of ruling, had to fight and kill many yakshas. Such action is necessary for Kshatriyas. A Kshatriya should not be a coward, and he should not be non-violent. In other words, he should be violent, but surgically violent. Right? And he should not be non-violent. To rule over the country, he has to act violently. Kshatriyas and Vaishyas are therefore especially advised to give in charity at least 50% of their accumulated wealth. In Bhagavad Gita, it is recommended that even though one enters the renounced order of life, he still cannot give up the performance of yajna, dana, and tapasya, meaning sacrifice, charity, and austerity. They are never to be given up. Tapasya is meant for the renounced order of life. Those who are retired from worldly activities should perform tapasya, penances, and austerities. Those who are in the material world, the Kshatriyas and Vaishyas, must give charity. Brahmacharis in the beginning of their lives should perform different kinds of yajnas. Dhruva Maharaja, as an ideal king, practically emptied his treasury by giving charity. A king is not meant simply to realize taxes from the citizens and accumulate wealth to spend in sense gratification. The world monarchy has failed ever since kings began to satisfy their personal senses with the taxes accumulated from the citizens. That is the truth. That is the absolute truth right there. And this is the same thing today. If you ever heard of Occupy Wall Street, have you ever heard of that? What was that all about? People were really upset that in New York, all the rich people, they live like on the 40th floor of the high-rise building or the 50th floor of the penthouse, right? And all the common people, they're in the subway and they're on the street, right? And the common people are living in New York City, check to check. And the rich people, they're making sometimes $1 million a day. So this disparity between such fantastic riches and such, let's say, day-to-day existence of the common people on the ground is unfair, and it's factual. It is unfair. You're not supposed to have so much money. If you're able to gain it, that's fine, but you're supposed to distribute it. You're not supposed to keep all that money, because we don't need so much money to maintain ourselves. So when the dichotomy, or the difference between the rich and the poor becomes so great, there's a revolution. It's called communism, to try and even it out again. And they do it brutally by killing them and taking possession of their properties and their money, or kicking them out of the country and taking possession of their properties. So this, let's say, battle between the proletariat and the bourgeoisie, as Marx said, it's been going on since time immemorial. And because you're not supposed to accumulate more than what you need. You can do it if you have the ability to do it, but all that is beyond your basic needs should be used to spread Krishna consciousness. Otherwise, it's sinful, and people suffer because of it. Look at the Kennedy family. Joe Kennedy was a bootlegger. That's how he made his money. He made it illegally. He was a gangster, just like Al Capone, but he was a little more clever than Al Capone. And by the way, he supported Hitler. He admired Hitler, and he was a supporter of Hitler, right? And later on, his son becomes president of the United States, right? But what happened? His sons, or at least two of them, were assassinated, and the third one was a murderer. So there was a lot, and then even the grandsons and the great-grandsons, they also are suffering because of the sinfulness of the grandsire of that dynasty. And collecting so much money, whether legally or illegally, is sinful if you hold on to it and use it for sense gratification. If you disperse it, then the enviousness of the poorer people goes away, because they see that you're actually trying to help them. But if you just exploit people and make all that money and just flaunt it by spending it foolishly on gadgets and houses and cars and boats and vacations and things like that, eventually people become envious and they become angry. And that's called communism. So we see that, and there's another very interesting point here. Let me see if I can find it quickly. So Dhruva, as an ideal king, practically emptied his treasury by giving charity. A king is not meant to simply to realize taxes from the citizens and accumulate wealth to spend in sense gratification. World monarchy has failed ever since kings began to satisfy their personal senses with the taxes accumulated from the citizens. Of course, whether the system is monarchy or democracy, the same corruption is still going on. At the present moment, there are different parties in the democratic government, but everyone is busy trying to keep his post or trying to keep his political party in power. The politicians have very little time to think of the welfare of the citizens, whom they oppress with heavy taxes in the form of income tax, sales tax, and many other taxes. People sometimes have 80 to 90% of their income taken away. By the way, before Ronald Reagan was elected president, the tax was up to 90%. Did you know that? Under the peanut farmer, I forget what his name is now, the peanut farmer who helped Khomeini depose the Shah of Iran and caused this whole, upset of the Middle East. So we see that Prabhupada here is telling the truth, and sometimes have 80 to 90% of their income taken away, and these taxes are lavishly spent for the high salaries drawn by the officers and rulers. Formerly, the taxes accumulated from the citizens were spent for performing great sacrifices as enjoined in the Vedic literature. At the present moment, however, almost all forms of sacrifice are not at all possible. Therefore, it is recommended in the Shastras that people should perform Sankirtan Yajna. Any householder, regardless of his position, can perform his Sankirtan Yajna without expenditure. All the family members can sit down together and simply clap their hands and chant the Hare Krishna Mahamantra. Somehow or other, everyone can manage to perform such a yajna and distribute prasada to the people in general. That is quite sufficient for this age of Kali. The Krishna consciousness movement is based on this principle. Chant the Hare Krishna mantra at every moment, as much as possible, both inside and outside of the temples, and as far as possible distribute prasada. This process can be accelerated with the cooperation of state administrators and those who are producing the country's wealth. Simply by liberal distribution of prasada and sankirtana, the whole world can become peaceful and prosperous. Now you know why we have the food truck, and we're getting more food trucks, and we should get more food trucks and distribute more prasadam and do more festivals and distribute more prasadam and in every way chant Hare Krishna and be happy. You see, this is the way to spread Krishna consciousness. By the way, Lord Chaitanya never preached in public. He only performed kirtan, sankirtan, and distributed prasadam. See, that's the way to change this world. And we should, and the grihastas should support this, and it should be expanded exponentially, because this is the way to change society. It's not by hoarding the money; it's by distributing the result of money in the form of festivals, prasadam, sankirtan. Generally, in all the material sacrifices recommended in the Vedic literature, there are offerings to demigods. This demigod worship is especially meant for less intelligent men. Actually, the result of such sacrifice goes to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Narayana. Lord Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita 5:29, Bhaktaram yagitapasam sarvaloka maheshwaram suridam sarvabhutanam gyatvamam santam richati. He is actually the enjoyer of all sacrifices. His name, therefore, is Yajna Purusha. Although Dhruva Maharaj was a great devotee and had nothing to do with these sacrifices, to set an example to his people, he performed many sacrifices and gave all his wealth in charity. For as long as he lived as a householder, he never spent a farthing, meaning not 1 penny, for his sense gratification. In this verse, the word karma phala pradam is very significant. The Lord awards everyone different kinds of karma as the individual living entities desire. He is the super soul present within the heart of everyone, and he is so kind and liberal that he gives everyone full facilities to perform whatever acts one wants. Then the result of the action is also enjoyed by the living entity. If anyone wants to enjoy or lord it over material nature, the Lord gives him full facilities, but the person becomes entangled in the resultant reactions. Similarly, if anyone wants to engage himself fully in devotional service, the Lord gives him full facilities and the devotee enjoys the results. The Lord is therefore known as Karma Phala Prada. In other words, he is facilitating the materialist and facilitating the devotee. But the devotee will use the money and assets to spread Krishna consciousness, and the karmi will use it for his own selfish purposes and become entangled and full of misery as time goes on. Okay, well, we'll stop right there. There's another big point, but I'll make it tomorrow. Are there any questions? Man proposes, God disposes. So if we want material opulence for sense gratification, depending on your karma, you'll get some level of that, right? And if you spend the money on sense gratification, you become entangled.
So in case of material desire, karma is the checks and balances. But whereas in case of devotional service, the more we seek, there is no. Is there also based on the karma the only the Lord gives, or is it depending on our?
No, devotional service is pure devotional service. It's unlimited. The benedictions one can receive. Look what Dhruva Maharaj gets. He gets a planet that's eternal in the material world. What could be better than that? And the Lord becomes his doorman to protect him. So, which is more profitable, being a karmi or being a devotee? Which is better business, being a devotee or being a karmi? You see? I mean, people don't understand this. Even the devotees don't understand it. You know, they're holding on to pennies. You know, don't be afraid. Don't be afraid. We're dealing with Krishna. We're not dealing with, Saddam Hussein or Bush or Trump or Biden. We're dealing with Krishna. He's the richest person in the whole existence. So if he sees that you're going to use everything in his service, he's going to give you unlimitedly. And if he sees that you're a penny pincher, I got $50 in the bank, I'll just give half 50 cents to the temple, Then okay, then you want to penny Annie the Lord, then he'll penny Annie you. Yeah. Okay, thank you, Hare Krishna. Tomorrow I'm going to say something, I'm going to read something very, very interesting on the same subject, something you've never heard before. Shri Guru Charana Padma Kevala Bhakati Sadma Mando Mui Savadana Mate Mando Mui Savadana Mate Yanara Prasade Bhai E Baba Toriya Jai Krishna Prapti Hoya Hoite Krishna Prapti Hoya Hoite Guru Mukha Padma Vaikya Chetete Goriya Gya Arana Koriya Maneya Sa Arana Koriya Maneya Sa Shri Guru Charane Rati Aise Uttamagati Ye prasade pure sarvasa Ye prasade pure sarvasa Chakshudana dilaje janme Prabhu se Chakshudana dilaje janme Prabhu se Divya de prakashito Divya Gan Brinde Prakashito Prema Bhakti Jahoite Avidya Vinasa Jate Prema Bhakti Jahoite Avidya Vinasa Jate Vedika Janara Charito Vedika Janara Charito Shri Guru Karuna Sindhu Adana Janara Bandhu Shri Guru Karuna Sindhu Adana Janara Bandhu Lokenath Lokera Jivana Lokenath Lokera Jivana Ah Prabhu Kora Doya Deya Mori Padachaya Ah Prabhu Kora Doya Deya Mori Padachaya Ebe Asa Gusukti Bhuvana Ebeyas Kusakti Bhuvana Jaya Prabhupada Jaya Prabhupada Jaya Prabhupada Jaya Prabhupada Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutale Shrimati Bhakti Vedanta Santa Swami Niti Namini. Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pracharine Nirvisesa Sunyavadi Bhaskatya Desatarine. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Sivasadi Gaur Bhakta Vrinda. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Sivasadi Gaur Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare. Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare. Nitai Gaur Haribol, Haribol, Gaur Haribol, Nitai Gaur Haribol, Nitai Gaur Haribol. Jayam Vishnupad Paramansa Parvajikachasta Terasa Terashi Shishimad. His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Goswami Maharaj, Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai, Anantakoti Vaishnava Vrinda Ki Jai, Acharya Haridas Thakur Ki Jai, Prem Shikohosh Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Dvaita Gadadhar Sivasati Gaur Bhaktivinoda Ki Jai, Shri Radha Krishna Gopinath Sam Kunda Radha Kunda Giri Govardhan Ki Jai, Shri Vrindavan Dham Ki Jai, Shri Mayapur Dham Ki Jai, Jagannath Puri Dham Ki Jai, Tulasi Devi Ki Jai, Bhakti Devi Ki Jai, Ganga Maya Ki Jai, Jamuna Maya Ki Jai, Samaveda Bhaktivinoda Ki Jai, Nitai Gaura Premanandi. All glories to the assembled devotees, all glories to the assembled devotees, all glories to the assembled devotees, all glories to Shri Guru and Shri Guranga, all glories to Srila Prabhupada Patita Pavana Ki Jai. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Namaste Saraswati Devi Guru. The lotus feet of our spiritual master are the only way by which we can attain the pure devotional service. I bow down to his lotus feet with great awe and reverence. By his grace, one can cross the ocean of material suffering and obtain the mercy of Krishna. My only wish is to have my consciousness purified by the words emanating from his lotus feet. Attachment to his lotus feet is a perfection and fulfills all desires. He opens my darkened eyes and fills my heart with transcendental knowledge. He He is my Lord, birth after birth. From him, ecstatic prema emanates. By him, ignorance is destroyed. The Vedic scriptures sing this character. Our spiritual master is the ocean of mercy, the friend of the poor, and Lord and master of devotees. Oh, your fame is spread throughout all the three worlds. We take shelter in Lotus Street. Srila Prabhupada, Patita Pavani Ki Jai. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutili Srimati Bhakti Vedanta Swami Tanam. Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharini Nirvisesa Sunyavadi Paskati.